Hi, this is Eternal King here, bringing you another LOR video today. So I want to talk about the last LOR tournament ever in the lifespan of this game. So obviously, once the standard experiment started in LOR about a year and a half ago, all of the tournament formats kind of moved to the reduced card format. And since then, the meta of standard has remained exceptionally static. Um, I've joked before saying that, standard is basically an aggro open attack spam fest. That is the format, and it never really evolved beyond that. And while, sometimes it was a little more aggressive, while other times it was a little more mid-range tempo, it was a lot of open swings with high tempo cards for as much value as possible, and then defeating the opponent that way. And if it wasn't that, if it wasn't this mid-range tempo meta, then it was an aggro meta. And those were the only two options. There were no control decks that ever were popularized in standard in any meaningful sense. And that received the same amount of success as their eternal brethren, and there were no combo decks in standard that ever received the same amount of success as their eternal brethren. This is just factual. Here we are at the towards the end of the life cycle of this game, and there's not going to be any new definitive standard decks until rotation happens, and there aren't any more tournaments. So what I'm going to show you is the last best LOR deck, last best LOR tournament deck. There's very little room for discussion here. The last Runeterra Open that is ever going to happen for this game was won by Annie. It's Annie Jhin. Annie Jhin is not a strange deck. It's one-drop spam. There are a full 12 one-drops in this deck. There are high-tempo value 2-drops that push a lot of damage. Sure, there's Mansoul Student who does a little bit of burning. There's Noxian Fervor because that's the burn that's available. Pirouette is your stun for more tempo. More stuns with the Witness for more tempo on top of Stage Hand and on top of Sunhawk, and then just swinging for damage. Like, that's the deck. It's not complicated, it's not interesting, but what is worth discussing and what is worth talking about isn't the winner of the last Runeterra Open, and it isn't the deck that he played, and it isn't, the state of standard right now. It's really the final nail in the coffin for standard as a format. You would expect that if there was any more tech to mine out of the standard format, if there were any breakout decks or anything that was going to do well towards the latter half of LOR's life cycle, this would be the Runeterra Open for it to break out and for it to exist. It never happened. We were given very bold promises by Majin Bay and all the other pro players and streamers that standard as a format would become something unique and diverse and interesting. But that never happened. And here we are at the last tournament of LOR, face to face with the least dynamic and least interesting and least compelling of aggro decks being the top of the tournament, the final tournament of LOR ever. So I think we can definitively say that standard as a format, as the main premier format of LOR, was a failed experiment. There's no other way to put it. Microtransactions aren't happening for the game. Deck diversity in the tournament format isn't happening for the game in the standard format. And the last tournament ever is ending with the wet fart. It's really ending with it'd basically be like if the last Magic the Gathering tournament that ever happened won with red deck wins. And it's like, that would be really sad for the people who have been supporting the game for the last 20 years. In this case, we've been supporting this game for the last 5 years. So it's for basically just to be a Control-C, Control-V copy-paste situation of the top aggro deck in standard, having it be the also top deck in the last LOR tournament is terrible. It's god-awful. It's basically garbage. The one good news I can say, other than, the last pro player exhibition ever happening, the last thing I can say about that is good is that now that that's out of the way, I'm really looking forward to the new Eternal season starting tomorrow. Now that we've kind of acknowledged and moved past that pro players don't matter, their last exhibition in the standard format was awful. And when it comes to deck design, deck diversity, basically LOR showcasing what it does well as a game, just did not happen. So Standard was a failure. The last LOR tournament is ending with a wet flop, and the last, Standard tournament deck to receive #1 place ever is just Annie Jhin, which could have been piloted by a number of people. Pretty much anyone could have just kind of run this and piloted it and likely received the #1 spot in the tournament. Maybe this guy is marginally better than all the other Annie Jhin players out there, to a percentile of decision making. But even if that's the case, I really don't care. That's like saying, like, the best aggro player, the best, Annie Jhin aggro player is about as interesting to me as the best Azir Aurelia player in Eternal. It's just like luckily I don't think Azir Aurelia would be, if there was a Runeterra Open right now in Eternal, the last ever Runeterra Open in the, full LOR card format, I don't think that Azir Aurelia would be the winner. Quite frankly, I have no idea who the winner would be. It's very possible it's a control deck like Meta Nora Swain. It could be something totally different after the variety pack. Like, I don't actually know. It could be TF Draw. There's like a million decks it could be other than aggro. But when it comes to Eternal as a format, it really was going to be Annie Jhin, or it was going to be like Gwen Zed and like WoW. Super exciting. Or it would have been like the three-way split meta, mid-range tempo with Eddie and just like standard garbage junk, right? And like no one cares. So let's see how Eternal shakes out. This game is undoubtedly dying, right? The last tournament ever just happened. But let's end it off on a good note. Let's take this last Eternal season into the stratosphere. Let's remind everyone why LOR is such an amazing and diverse game with so many champions, so many deck archetypes, so many, designs and formats, control, combo, aggro, mid-range, combinations of all the above, surprise win cons, burn, non-linear playstyles, just everything. Everything exists in Eternal at the same time. Elusive spam, big overwhelm units, flipping champions, like actually flipping your champions and having it matter. All of that stuff exists here. So I'm really excited to see what happens, Maybe we'll see someone pilot Anivia to top 100. That's a god tier player right there. I'd rather see someone pilot Anivia to top 100 in LOR as the final showcase of the game than someone piloting, Annie Jhin to the, percentile, like whatever that might be, 0.1% of optimal plays. They're like that close to playing the deck, 100% optimally. I'd rather see the Anivia player be top 100 than the top Annie Jhin player win another Runeterra Open. All right, this is Elusive King signing out. Look forward to some exciting decks coming up in the last, or possibly second last Eternal season of LOR.